Hello, welcome to the Be Well Now Method podcast. This podcast is for health professionals and health seekers to provide a way to take the stress out of being healthy. So my specialty is exercising well, exercising in the well state. And as a clinical exercise physiologist and a certified health coach, it's out of my scope of practice to talk about nutrition and emotional eating. And so that's why I wanted to have a fellow Janet on the program today. Janet Frank specializes in emotional eating, food addiction. She's also a national certified, board certified health coach. And so I'm so excited to have you on today, Janet. And I would love if you give our listeners a little more of your background and, what makes you so unique in terms of what you do, what you offer.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's so nice to be here. I appreciate you having me. So I started my professional career as a licensed psychologist working in private practice and was walking around with an undiagnosed autoimmune thyroid disorder and an undiagnosed gluten intolerance. And on top of that, some pretty severe life stressors at the time that were wildly beyond my control, which I imagine probably triggered some of this, but I really was not doing well. And it reached a point where it was difficult to sustain the work in practice. So I made a difficult decision to leave practice. And then I made this very unexpected pivot into commission-based advertising sales, which was actually a lot of fun. It wasn't necessarily the best environment in which to try to heal, since it was pretty stressful being commission-based, but I figured it out. I had a lot of fun. Along the way, I was able to kind of unravel all of the health issues and recover, and I'm thriving at this point. Somewhere in there, my dad died of heart disease. And like so many people had their COVID epiphanies, mine was, what am I doing in sales when I'm now thriving? I'm really well. I have this background in a helping profession. And then I see that health and wellness coaching had emerged as a profession when I wasn't looking. And I made the decision that day, that is the next path for me. So I'm certified as a functional health coach. And, functional health coaching is looking at not just band-aiding somebody's symptoms, but what is the root cause to somebody's difficulties. And I can't diagnose any of that, but we approach things with that kind of understanding and appreciation. And then, so my first certification was as a functional health coach. Then I earned the national board certification. And then within the last couple of years, I also earned the certification as a professional food addiction coach and just have kind of evolved into this niche around emotional eating. My own recovery involved giving up a lot of foods. And there were times when I found that to be really difficult. Yeah. And I have historically been one of these people who loses and gains that same 20 pounds over and over again. And I know I may be working with a population who's dealing with wider weight swings than that. But even for me, that's been really frustrating. And it's been a journey to figure it out. And I just see the obesity rates in this country. I see, just people in the grocery store or when you're out and about who are moving like they hurt. And I just have an ever increasing appreciation as to how much of that can be connected to food. Yeah. And just want to be able to help people find their way out of that miserable cycle.
Yeah. So professionally and personally, and you have this deep compassion for people who are suffering unnecessarily because we're not getting to the root cause of things. Right. And coaching really does that.
Yeah. It's like so much more than I need to go on a diet, which is what I see people doing over and over and over again. It's not a diet.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. This is why I'm so excited to talk to you today and just learn more about you and what you do. So, and on the podcast, we use the Be Well Now method, which is, what I said to you before we got on was that this method is not anything new. It really just takes, the best science from brain and body and motivation and integrates it into, maybe a simple, easy to use way to take the stress out of habit change. And so, so we start then in the well state, which is, and we talked about that there's a lot of stuff going on right now in the world, in your area, and just being real. That's a lot about coaching, is being real. So we'll start by just being really here now and shift to the well state. So I invite you to close your eyes or just look down at something and
Mm.
feel your body and feel your breath and feel that you're here now. Let your attention kind of settle into your body and your breath, and feel that your breath is moving in and out without you having to do anything at all. That below all the stressors and the worries, there's this breath always taking care of you in the background, that you're being cared for. You might let that breath last a little longer. Just feel the breath moving in and out automatically without trying. And let that draw you into your center where you know what's most important right now below all the stuff. Just notice what you know now about what's most important about listening to this podcast right now, about your health and well-being. And then expand that awareness to your body and notice places that are holding that ready to move tension left over from stress, and let your body move. It wants to move to release it. So let your body move in any way. That might be a light movement. It might be a gentle touch. It might be squeezing and releasing, or a big, huge stretch. Just let your body take care of you. Let it release that tension. Then feel your breath again moving in and out, a big sigh. Whenever you're ready, let your eyes open. Just notice how you feel inside as you open your eyes.
You know, I know this stuff, and it never ceases to amaze me how powerful even just a brief practice can be.
Yeah.
At the time of our doing this recording, I am a few days out from somewhere in my state getting smacked with a second hurricane. Lots of people I know are right in the line of where this is supposed to land. And it's not good. And I have been quite tense, but even with that, I don't know what that was, 2 minutes, I feel lots of tension left. I'll walk around like this all day. That left, and I feel a lightness and kind of an openness in my core.
Yeah.
Just from a minute and a half, 2 minutes of just focused attention and letting go. Never ceases to amaze me. So
I know.
never underestimate the power of a brief meditation.
I agree. And I am in the same boat, Janet. Like this, it always amazes me, whether I'm leading the meditation or receiving it, the same feeling happens. And it's right there, like as close as our breath, always there, ready. So that leads us into what is here now for you. And I'd also like to then dovetail that into, how do you help your clients get here now and have that mindful awareness to get a little deeper into the core of the issues and the challenges?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've shared what's here for me, which is, and it's interesting. And I imagine I would invite a client to do the same thing, which is I've given myself permission right now. I just need to go from day to day right now, since this thing is a few days out. And if that feels too lofty, I need to go from hour to hour. And if that feels too lofty, I need to go from quarter hour to quarter hour. Like I can take this in as slow a chunks as I need to manage the stress of the unknown of what's coming. So that's a piece of it in terms of what's going on with me now. But, I think with clients, I would try, certainly I would ask what's going on with you. And if the words seem to match someone's presentation, then we're good. But if somebody says, I'm fine, and you suspect that they're not fine, the first thing might be inviting someone to do a short meditation or just observing to them, your words don't seem to match how you look, what's going on. And sometimes even just the prompt and the permission to acknowledge what's going on now is all you need to help somebody start tuning in and becoming more aware of what is going on and what they might need. Everyone is so different. Sometimes people come in and tell you, accurately,
Mhm.
exactly what's going on and exactly what they need. And some people need a lot more prompting and a lot more
Mhm.
questioning, and it's all okay. It's all part of the
Yeah.
the coaching process, is meeting people where they are. And I'm
Mm.
preaching to the choir telling you this,
Yeah.
um, but it's another piece that never ceases to be just really fascinating and just keeps me curious and feeling compassionate toward people, is the variety of ways in which people show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of conversations now that I've really enjoyed. And what I always hear you talking about how you practice what you guide people to do, and practicing it now during this stressful time, meeting yourself where you are and say, okay, here's the list of things that are really weighing on me right now. What can I do
Mhm.
right now? And
Yeah.
that sense of awareness, like nothing changes without awareness. That's the first step.
Hmm.
So you really invite people to just be where they are, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same time, also watching for the stories we tell
Mm.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we were just chatting before you hit record. I really do believe that I am safe.
Mm.
We are far inland. We are north of where this thing is projected to land. We live in a very solid block home
Mhm.
with a new roof. I mean, there's not too many things that could cause alarm. There's always
Yeah.
something that could happen. Um, but if I'm not careful, if I let this get away, then I'm terrified. This is very scary. What if, what if, what if?
Yeah.
And that never serves anyone. So it's pulling back to, what do I know to be true? What can
Mm.
I control?
Yeah.
And there is a sense of calm and letting go that comes with that.
Yeah.
But that takes some practice, and sometimes it takes some guidance and coaching to help somebody figure out how to make that work for them.
Yeah. It's not our default to figure out what's going
No.
well. And just by
Yeah.
naming it and naming all the things that are keeping you safe right now is calming. And you do that for clients,
Yeah.
helping them to
Well,
name what's well. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But as long as you just said that, it's not our default. But I
Mm.
would even take that a step further and remind people that we're kind of wired biologically to look for the negative,
Yeah.
because we're still genetically very similar to people from thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And thousands of years ago, when the bush rustled, it could have been a saber-toothed tiger behind the bush.
Yes.
So that's still with us today. So at the slightest provocation, we're kind of wired to look
Mm.
for the negative.
Yeah.
But because we do have a pretty evolved brain and we do live in different times, part of the fun and the joy in coaching is helping people realize you don't have to stay with that negative default.
I love how you just put that. And it is what coaching is different. There's not another piece of healthcare that does that focus, I think,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
and that purpose of coaching to pull out, help us to
Yeah.
shift what's going well. And that leads us to the well step, which is, how do we define well, like that why, that purpose, that sense of inner guidance,
Hmm.
not a definition of well, like my cholesterol's good and my blood sugar's good and I'm eating a healthy diet, but that
Right.
internal well. So, like,
Yeah.
what's your why for doing this work? You alluded to it in the introduction, but I'd love to hear
Yeah.
even more if there's more to that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a whole comprehensive picture. I mean, the biggest piece of my why is my wanting to live a long and healthy life and then just drop dead. Because
Right.
what we see in America now is people will spend the last 10 or 15 years of their lives living, but not living well. Riddled with disease or pain or discomfort, or living on 4,000 medications. And a big part of my motivation is I want to be able to do what I want to do for as long as I'm able to do it. And, I have a husband, we never know who's going to go first, but
Right.
I want to be well for him. I want to be well for the people in my family and my community who I may be able to be of service to, who I may be able to help. Um, I'm motivated by seeing what did happen to my dad. So
Mm.
I'm motivated to live differently, because he was part of that. The last 10, 15 years of his life were
Mm.
not so good. Um, but yeah, I mean, but with clients, what you're getting at is a process that, as far as I can see, is really unique to coaching, which is the
Mm.
visioning process. And it's
Yes.
something that I typically do with just about every client, is invite people to, it's permission to daydream, which
Mm.
usually stops. Kids are like, la, 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 I want this and this and this. And everybody goes, oh, that's so cute. Somewhere we cross this imaginary threshold into adulthood, and like, that's the end of that. It's permission to daydream a little bit. A visioning session is you imagining your life as good as you can possibly imagine it being, and maybe even a little bit better. So it's a little bit of a stretch. And we talk in depth about what that would look like, what that would feel like. What will you be doing in this as good as you can imagine it life? But then once we have a sense of what that is, and people can capture that with a statement, with a picture, with a poem, with a song, however they're able to hold on to it and have it feel real. From there, we extract, okay, then what do we need to be doing in coaching to start to advance in that direction? And a vision is to coaching kind of like what a North Star is to a sailor.
Ooh,
So if
good
you have a
analogy.
sailor out at sea in the dead of night, they don't know exactly where they're going. But if they're oriented to that North Star, they know that they can gauge the direction they're heading in. And that's kind of what a vision is. We don't know the answer. We don't know how we're going to get there. But if we're connecting what we're doing in coaching each time to that bigger vision, then we know you're heading in the right direction.
Just like you're doing with the hurricane. In a storm, right? I mean, a literal storm, you have a very clear vision of what's important now.
And I need to be prepared.
Yeah.
And I need to, we need to have gas in the generator, and we need to clear the tree limbs, which the last hurricane took care of that.
Thank you, hurricane.
Right. The silly things. I want to clean the floor so that if we do lose power, I'm not walking around in a dirty house. Little things that I know are going to make me feel as prepared and headed in the right direction as possible, given that going through a hurricane might be difficult and making change, changing habits, changing behaviors is difficult.
Yeah.
So what do you need in place to be an anchor?
Yeah. And that why also helps you keep priorities. It sounds like you said, okay, well, right now is not the time to work on a big project. Now's a hurricane coming. So with other people with their health, well, this is now important. Now I've got a family member who's ill. It's more important for me to stay calm versus now's the time to do lots of food prep and make it really complicated or learn something new about eating. Yeah.
Right.
So helping clients sort through that.
Right. Because there's so many things that we could be doing in the world that we live in. It's full of distractions. The vision helps you filter out some of those and choose what's the most important thing to be doing right now.
Yeah. And that leads right naturally into the now step, which is, okay, what do you want to do with this information? What's going on now? What's important right now? And then what's the action now that's going to keep you well? So, in terms of relationship with food and emotional eating and all of that, tell me more about the food piece of this, again, because it's out of my scope of practice. So I really want to tap into your wisdom about relationship with food.
I certainly want to clarify that I don't have the credentials to prescribe any kind of nutritional plan for someone either. But just in what I've learned in training and certifications and work with clients, is that may not even necessarily be the first step, because by the time people get to me, they've already tried to tweak their nutrition 1,000 times and they haven't succeeded. So the idea with this professional food addiction coach certification is looking at this from a much bigger picture. And I've developed a framework that kind of extracts the pieces from this training that I had that I'm describing as learn, love, and live. So the first thing people need is just some learning. And the main reason for this education is to help people get rid of some of the shame that they feel around this inability to lose weight, this inability to put down the processed food, the chips, the ice cream, whatever. So even something as simple as getting people to appreciate that there's something that exists known as a bliss point, which is this carefully researched and manipulated level, by food scientists employed by, I don't want to name companies, but all these big food companies,
who they are.
To find the perfect level of sweetness or saltiness, or crunchiness to get people coming back for the maximum number of portions. And it's literally called a bliss point. So when you can't put the Cheetos down, and that would be me, it's not your fault. They have figured out how to hijack the centers in our brains that are associated with pleasure and reward, and the food has control. So just things like that, food advertising is manipulative. Food labeling is manipulative. Lots of things are labeled as health foods that absolutely are blood sugar spikers and contribute nothing to people's health. So the first piece of this is just a lot of learning. And then the second piece of the framework is the love, which is anything and everything that tugs at your heartstrings and your emotions. So part of that is, how were you reinforced with food in your own family of origin? Were you praised for eating? Were you praised for not eating? Were you criticized for eating? Were you criticized for not eating? How many of us got the well-intentioned, clean your plate, there's starving children in the world? I mean, it's not a helpful thing to say.
Right.
So looking at some family of origin issues, looking at, some of the social cues. I am an emotional eater. If I'm out with friends having a good time, I tend to make choices that are bad for me and tend to overeat. But it's just learning where are your biggest emotional triggers.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that love part of the framework is getting people to really connect their emotional eating with what they're feeling specifically. And Susan David is a psychologist who's written the book Emotional Agility. And she literally says that being able to name an emotion really specifically is a superpower. So when somebody says, I'm angry, we work with people to figure out, are you just angry? Or if you had to name another emotion, what is it? If you had to name another, what is it? And often what you get at are people are really hurt. People are really disappointed. There's all kinds of things. So getting people to really understand clearly what's the emotion associated with your wanting to go eat. And then behind every emotion, particularly the unpleasant ones, is an unmet need. So helping people understand what's the need behind this emotion. So then learning people, helping people learn what are some other ways you might meet this need other than going to eat something.
Wow.
So there's a lot that fits under the love piece of the framework. And the last one is living, which is to some extent how you started this podcast, is learning to slow down, learning to understand when is my body and or my mind completely revved up and spinning, and how can I learn to slow that down? Because if you don't learn to take yourself out of this revved up state into a more calm state, you are going to be prone to give in to the impulses and the cravings. Living can also be, how do you set boundaries with people? It can be, how do you sleep? Because we all know when you don't sleep well, you have the crazy munchies. There's, can't possibly go over it all in a 30-minute podcast, but there's so much to this. So I want people to understand that if you are someone who eats emotionally and feels stuck in that cycle of yo-yo dieting and feeling terrible about yourself, there is a way out, but it's work, and it may be something that you need some support with.
Yeah. This sounds so complete, so compassionate, and so freeing for people stuck in that loop. That just stuck. They're stuck by the scale. They're stuck by their weight. I mean, I see it all the time. And thank you for providing this pathway outward. It sounds just
Can I share a quick story? Do we have time?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I have a client who has been working on all of this stuff. And we had specifically just, not too long ago, looked at the emotions and the needs and dug into that pretty deeply. And then she found herself out in this situation where someone in the room was pretty obviously physically ill. And most of us understand what that's like. You're in a room with somebody that you know is sick, and you feel like you're breathing in this germy, disgusting air, and it just leaves this pit in your stomach, and it just feels gross.
Yeah.
That's how she felt. And when she got out of there, she was so distressed and uncomfortable that she was craving. She had a very specific want for a certain kind of fast food all the way home. But she remembered our conversation, got home, really thought about how she was feeling, really dug into what she needed, chose to go that path instead, and found that the craving dissipated. Wow. So as a coach, of course, I'm going to ask her, wow, that's quite a story. What did you learn from this? And she dropped what I feel is like this bombshell of a quote. And she said, and I have permission to use this, she said, fixing the issue fixes the issue better than food.
Wow.
And that's what I said. I said, you
Oh
have
my
no
gosh.
idea what an amazing quote that is.
And
Fixing the issue fixes the issue better than food.
Testament to how you led her to that awareness. And she actually experienced it by applying it. And then it was like this aha. Oh, I love that. Fixing the issue is better.
Imagine how empowered she felt.
Yes.
Just to learn these skills, to make the choice, to find the pause, to practice it enough, and to have it be effective for her.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, you just seen the grin on her face.
Yeah. So many skills there. And they're skills that every time you do it, that reinforces, hey, you know what? When I have that craving next time, I know something better.
Yeah. Fixing the issue fixes the issue better than food.
Right. That is a great quote. Oh my gosh. That should be in every supermarket aisle.
Right in front of the candy.
As food, yeah. Just to kind of say, hey, hold on, pause. What are you doing this for? And not with shame. And I think I love how love is in there, that this is not a shame reaction. And part of this, like, how do we take the stress out of these habit changes is to do it from a place of love, of self-care, not a reaction to shame, not a should.
Right.
So that we're not stuck in the stress state.
Right. Because nothing gets accomplished in the stress state.
No.
And I've heard you talk 1,000 times about how exercise shouldn't be a stress state, but neither should eating.
Yeah. And we have to, and this is why what we do dovetails so nicely, Janet, not only our names, but our work dovetails, because one of my clients calls this the deadly triangle: food, exercise, weight. Yeah. And she said, I'm constantly like, my weight goes up, then I crave bad food, and then I exercise to undo the bad food, and then I try and eat well, and my weight goes down, and then I, stop exercising because my weight's down, and like deadly triangle, what she called it. I was like, it's so true. Yeah. And so when we approach this from a very caring perspective, we break apart that triangle. You're no longer stuck. Yeah. You're able to then, like you said, understand where it's coming from. So that you can kindly say, I really want to choose something better for myself.
Yeah. And you just nailed it. It's the learning, understanding all the emotions and the love and the feelings, and then changing how you live slowly.
Yes, gradually, because that's how we all change, is gradual, step by step, one step at a time. Practice, learn, practice, learn. Yeah. And this is, and that's how we get to be well now, even while we're, not perfectly healthy. We don't have to be perfect. It's an ever evolving.
Nobody's perfect.
No.
Ever.
No, there'll always be storms.
And people have this misconception of us as health and wellness coaches.
Yes.
That we have it down perfectly.
No.
I eat emotionally. If you put a sleeve of gluten-free Oreos in front of me, it will take a lot of mindfulness for me not to eat the whole sleeve. Yeah. I try not to. I'm aware it's not good for me, but I think the big difference is we're further along in the journey than a lot of people, and our intention is very focused. Our vision is locked and loaded. I don't like that phrase. It's violent, but you know what I mean? Yeah. That's the difference, but
we've just had more practice at it.
Right.
But there'll always be things that come up in our lives that ask us to then practice it deeper and find another way to practice.
Challenged too. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
I just want people need to know that.
Yes, I agree. And I'm so glad you said that, because I think so too. I think that we have this very media driven image of healthy people, people who have, diet and exercise advice that are imaging, this perfect life. And behind the scenes, it's not behind the media images and all of that. And coaching is real. Coaching is about being real and being real with yourself. And giving yourself the time to do that.
Right.
And you fill that space of coaching, it sounds like, with such depth and such wisdom.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I try.
So I want to just say to people listening and watching that if you are struggling, if you're in that deadly triangle, if what you're doing is just not working and this is causing you stress, that contact Janet, please. Contact her. And so please tell people where they can find you, where they can learn from your wisdom and connect with you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. LinkedIn, you'll find me if you just search for Janet Frank, Health and Wellness Coach. Facebook is Janet Frank Coaching. My website is janetfrankcoaching.com. And email is janet@janetfrankcoaching.com.
Good and easy to remember. I love that.
Easy to remember.
And I'd
Yeah.
love to say to the health professionals who are listening, where diet and emotional eating are out of your scope of practice, that Janet is a great resource for helping you help your clients and patients to get out of that struggle and
Yeah.
make your job easier too.
Yeah. And either scope of practice or just simply not within the time that you have
Yeah.
allotted for your work for people. Use us. That's why we exist.
Right. We're there to help.
And it will
Yeah.
make your job easier. If someone
Yeah.
else is able to help somebody get over the hurdles of why they're so stuck and changing their health habits to make a physician or some health professional's treatment plan more effective, I mean, what a dream.
Yeah. We really fill that gap between recommendations and action, like
Right.
health-giving, life-giving action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Implementation specialists.
Yes, I love that. Oh, awesome. Cool. Anything else you want to add today, Janet? This was so great.
Oh gosh. I don't think so. I really appreciate the opportunity just to come on and share all of this.
And I really appreciate you taking the time, especially with all that you have going on right now. You're embodying, what you share with people, which is to how to stay calm and clear about what's most important.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, Janet.